Redditors that work jobs most people don't know exist. What is it and how do people react when you tell them your job? I was an enucleator. When people passed and wanted to donate their corneas, I would retrieve their eyes from their body and take them to the lab to process for transplant. When people found that out, they were either completely grossed out or thought it was really interesting. Good friend of mine had that job and told the best jokes about it. She became a trainer and liked to talk about people who quit right away despite being told in graphic detail about what they will be doing. I had a brief stint as a junior cheese evaluator. People loved hearing about the cheese tasting part. But what is less known is the business analytics side of things. We have to know what good cheese is and what consumer tastes are like and how to influence those tastes to make room for company products that maximize profits for the cheesemaker and retailer. There's a whole national certification exam I was studying for before I decided to take a drastic career shift because the whole cheese thing wasn't paying the bills and it was too much work holding down 3 jobs. The whole cheese thing wasn't paying the bills and it was too much work holding down 3 jobs. Till there isn't much cheddar in cheese. I produce subtitles for TV and now for online learning at a university. It's been amazing how many people have thought that either A computer does it, or B, I'm a sign language interpreter. I was also a teleprompter autocue operator for a while when I first left uni, and it was one of the best jobs I've had. Though again, people thought a computer did it, and I've had likes of actors literally laugh in my face because they consider it beneath the lowest of the low apparently, until it breaks. Train controller. People ask me if I drive trains. I am in the habit now of just preempting people and saying it is like air traffic control but for the rail network. In the USA, I believe it is called train dispatch. People are generally sort of impressed and want to ask questions about the railway. I'm a little late to the party here, but I work as an abatement falconer. It's basically all natural pest bird control using the predator-prey dynamic. I bring trained birds of prey to properties where pest birds like starlings, pigeons, gulls are either causing damage or interfering with business operations. A typical day will mostly consist of A to B flights. We'll send the hawk up to a high perch where it is visible to the pest birds, and that's usually enough to scare them away from areas where they might otherwise be a problem. We apply pressure as needed, so if the pest birds are really aggressive, gulls are the worst, we will actively chase them. When pest birds get chased by a hawk, it is unlikely that they will get close enough to risk being chased again. We can control a large area with the hawk's presence alone. Falconry-based abatement can be used to control pest birds in places like resorts, landfills, business parks, HOAs, golf courses, vineyards, farms, dairies, refineries, etc. It's a clean, sustainable, and effective alternative to poisons, netting, trapping, and shooting. While it's mostly bloodless, the reality is that when free-flying predatory birds in a target-rich environment, instances of predation will occur. Sometimes the hawks catch a pigeon or a gull or whatever. My job gets super easy for a few weeks when that happens. LOL. The other birds will see that and just go somewhere else for a while. I work on a truck doing simulated emergencies with high-fidelity mannequins. The mannequins have pulses they breathe. You can listen to lung sounds, and their eyes move back and forth. We take the truck to fire departments and critical access hospitals in our state to provide emergency training at no cost to the fire departments and hospitals. There are only 5 states that I know of in the nation that do this training. A friend of mine is a harbor pilot. Brings huge ships in and out of harbors. Makes mid-6 figures. A lot of boredom with high stress in the middle. Very hard job to get into. Have to have a lot of connections and be known somewhat in the industry in your local area. Once upon a time I worked at a borsted. I got hired in the lab preserving semen for sale. Dull, morning headachy work staring at semen under a microscope. Boo at the shed often needed help collecting semen, and a fun, well-paying, easy job. Go get the pig, get him to mount, grab a penis and then nap as they ejaculate for 10 to 15 minutes. Repeat. I got paid $27 an hour to sit on a stool and hold a curly penis 3 days a week. I now work 6-7 days, collect blood samples, monitor surgery, take phones, do inventory and handle angry clients with a smile for $16 as a vet tech. If you've got the guts, Consider Pig W. Not me, but a longtime friend of my dad's is a professional carbonated beverage pourer. Spell check's not happy with pourer. Is it poorest? Pour master? It was for close-up shots, mostly for commercials for sodas or beers, and sometimes for movies or TV shows. At one point I asked my dad, not wanting to be rude to the guy, is that one of those jobs where some studio exec just picks one of their buddies to get paid a salary for basically nothing? According to my dad, this was not the case. Apparently it was very specialized. Precision work. They'd be like, okay, we need a 5-second pour with a 1-inch head that settles into a 3-stroke forehead in 2 seconds. And he could make it happen. Mistakes were a big deal because studio time's expensive. If he messed up too many times, one of the crew would be drunk, etc. As a kid I always imagined this guy at work to look like someone defusing a bomb or something. Dramatic music, everyone staring anxiously, bead of sweat on the forehead, etc. As far as I know, that imagining is completely accurate. I was talking to a food stylist and there is one lady who does all of the sour cream commercials because she can make perfect dollops. Apparently they call her the Dollop Queen of Georgia. I'm an operations manager for the Blue Man Group show. A lot of people don't realize how many people it takes behind the scenes to put on that show. I'm a procurement officer for an airline. I order parts for planes. No one seems to realize my job exists, but everyone gets it when I tell them what I do. Reaction is generally, wow, that's so cool. In reality I raise purchase orders all day, but it's pretty cool to wander out to the hangar when a plane is in. The mechanics appreciate you, I promise. I work for a pond and water garden company specializing in Japanese koi fish sales. Nothing too crazy, but people always seem a little surprised when I tell them I sell imported koi fish for way too much money. Yes, but if you have the koi bug, there is no such thing as too much money for a specimen fish. My local importer has some Japanese fish of very good pedigree that are £5,000 to £7,500 each. Lovely, but more than I can ever justify spending. Not me, but a blind date I was set up on years ago. Doing the usual small talk. She said she worked for the court system. When someone was sentenced to community service, they had to report to her, and she's find them a job that would meet the requirements of their community service, and then supervise them through their sentence. She prided herself in her success in that job. When she'd tell someone that their sentence was up, they'd frequently reply with, "Oh, well, I kinda like this job. Is there any way I can keep it?" Archivist. I work with historical documents in an archives. Most people say they don't know what an archivist is. I always have to explain. It gets confused with archaeologist, librarian, museum curator, architect. A what? Usually even after I explain, people are still confused. Sometimes I consider saying that I do something else just to make it easier for people. I'm a glassblowing, flammewalking instructor at a local municipal arts center. My parents wish I was a doctor, minister, or had taken over the family business. Most people are amazed I can make any money doing what I do. In reality, I love teaching and have an inborn desire to set things on fire. You know those penny smasher machines that they have at tourist spots? You put a penny and 2 quarters in the machine and then turn the crank and it presses a design into the penny. I maintain and operate a bunch of those around the city. Also a few Zolters. I do arcade games too, but the penny machines are even weirder. A lot of people don't know that most coin-operated machines aren't owned by the store in which they reside. So there are lots of operators that have all sorts of machines which they place and maintain. And generally you split the revenue with the location owner. My kids have been collecting smashed pennies for 20+ years. We love finding those machines. Thanks for keeping them running. It's so disappointing to come across one and then find out it's broken. Not me, but when I was a hostess at a steakhouse we had a guy who would come in on weekends when it was busy and walk around making balloon animals for people for tips. Some nights he made more than the servers, who also tipped him for balloons. He would make a really cute flower bracelet we could wear. He made some really cool crap. Not me, but one of my best friend's husband's job was to read Bill Gates' mail with the intent to prevent crazy people from showing up at the Microsoft campus demanding to speak with him. I'd also like to add that it was also his job to deal with them if they actually showed up. So I'm a matte painter and work in visual effects. Most everyone on here and in the world knows that exists, but I work on mid-budget films that you wouldn't expect need effect work. The most common response is come on. VFX is for Marvel movies, not this, but you'd be surprised to know how much green screen, matte painting extensions, compositing and retiming touch-ups go into your art house films and dramas. Case in point, that conversation in a car, yeah, that was on a sound stage and we added the background in. That hotel with the logo in lights, yeah, that was 3D and a clean plate behind it by cloning out the original. That conversation, that was so dramatic. That was 2 takes we stitched together and retimed so it was seamless with the audio. That time those actors were speaking to a large crowd, we added them in through tiling. That bridge you see them walking on, we put a new background behind each different cut so it looks like they traveled further. I'm a life model full-time. I'm that nude person that sits, stands, poses for drawing, painting, sculpture, art classes. I usually just tell people I'm a model and leave it at that, but if they ask for details then I'll explain. Usually they are curious or mention their experiences in life drawing classes or talk about their distant relative friend who's an artist and uses nude models. It's a very physical job and takes concentration and effort to stay still and pretend to be a sort of living statue. I measure and inspect for new carpet. My entire job is to receive my customer list for the next day, make a schedule for those customers, connect with them and make sure the time works and location is correct, drive to their house and perform the measurement and inspection during the time frame, send the results to our company's calculations department, then be on my way. I make $22 per assignment and average 7 to 11 per day, 5 days a week. I started last August and already have a nice vehicle and am pre-approved for a home loan. I could make so much more if I worked another day a week, but coordinating 8-12 adults' schedules is extremely stressful. I can only imagine the scheduling headache. Sounds cool though. I was a traffic counter and statistical analyst. I would sit at specific intersections with a partner and take note of every car that went through the intersection, including where they came from and where they went. I would note if they turned, which direction they turned in, etc. We would also lay long cords across roadways to count traffic automatically. I would then take all of the data captured, analyze it, formulate reports and then deliver it to the client. A lot of work was done for the government. Whenever I'd see a car sitting at an intersection as a kid, I'd ask my mom about it and she'd tell me they were counting cars. I drive over the wires all the time and think of you guys. I am a vinyl installer. I lay thin adhesive color or patterned vinyl on walls and cars. Informally I call myself a rapper. Even Google has a hard time knowing what I'm talking about and the government doesn't recognize it as a job when I apply for things. Most people when I tell them have no idea what I do and usually make lame jokes about dropping a beat for me to rap. The government doesn't recognize it as a job when I apply for things. It's amazing what the government doesn't realize is a job. I'm a biotechnologist, not a biologist, not a technician. It's a field of work with thousands of people, yet the government doesn't get it. I was an industrial espionage specialist for a year. Basically companies would pay the company I worked for to gain intel on their competitors, their distribution chain, expansion plans, contracts, etc. My job was to gather intelligence. Sometimes I would go undercover as a low-level employee. Sometimes I would go undercover as a headhunter and interview current employees, carefully using questions to elicit information. Sometimes I would use a discretionary fund to purchase intel from employees. Once I even went undercover as a reporter to interview a logistics manager. Sometimes I would just spend hours reading information on the stock exchange, government planning departments, etc. It was a weird job, but I could usually piece together a good amount of info. I paint food for a living. As in, I paint pictures of food for packaging, advertising, publications, etc. I used to do general illustrations, but I enjoyed the food jobs the most and decided to specialize. I have definitely gotten a lot more work in such a niche industry. Usually people are both surprised and interested. Pretty much everybody likes food, so even though it's niche, it's definitely relatable. It's even weirder when I tell them that I do it in Japan while simultaneously doing food travel reporting on Japanese TV. I'm a pattern maker. which is kind of hard to explain, so I tell people I'm a tool and die maker because they've heard those words before. People who like craftsmanship think it's really cool. People who have no idea what I do think I'm a crazy person when I start getting way too into my description. Went on a Tinder date with a gal who did a certain kind of set decoration for TV shows. When something is filmed on location in a house or office or whatever, she not only had to make things look nice, but travel far and wide to find pictures and objects that could be used without running the risk of copyright infringement. That must be difficult. We're so used to branded things. Just removing all of them would probably make a room look unfamiliar and unrealistic. Classified substitute at a high school district. They'd asked why I was called a classified sub. The sub part was easy enough to explain, but the classified part always confused people when I'd tell them. I was basically a substitute for any position in the district that didn't require teaching the children. Custodian, nurse, security, IT, etc. Most people didn't even realize those positions required substitutes. I used to go into Indian reserves in Canada and investigate cause of environmental pollution. Few people in Canada actually know what it's like on reserves. It can be a very depressing place. Canadians love to throw their garbage that municipal landfills either won't take, or people are too lazy and think they can dump their garbage on some Indians. Ever see some video of trash piles in Asia or Africa? Don't need to go far. Illegal toxic waste dumps are in Canada and we don't have the ability to catch polluters. I got really fed up with not being able to do anything. It's like fighting all of Canada to get decent living conditions to the people who let us into the country. Frick, I hate that. We used to trail riding on Crown land and there was so much crap in there. Refrigerators, box springs, construction waste. People really will go an hour out of their way to avoid paying a landfill fee. I work in a costume production and alteration shop in a state college theater department. Not a particularly surprising or uncommon job, but for some reason some of the older rancher types are astounded that you can actually get paid for altering and making costumes. I write erotica romance novels for a living. It's usually a combination of "oh, that's cool" or faint disapproval, but that's rare. I had one guy on a first date lay his hand gently on mine, look deeply into my eyes and ask, entirely sincerely, "Who hurt you?" He couldn't quite wrap his mind around the fact that writing P didn't mean I hadn't been horribly scarred and broken by some traumatic experience in my past, and that I might just enjoy telling stories about frickin' for money. There was no second date. Usually, though, it's just a lot of questions. I kind of like that it's a bit of a cool job that people seem interested in, and even though it's not quite the stuff that I planned on writing, you know, back when I was going to be a serious literary novelist, I genuinely enjoy it. Hospital security guard. When I was younger, hospital security guards in some places are almost like limited versions of police officers. They have batons, even riot gear, handcuffs. Metropolitan hospitals, especially ones that do research and often associated with university campuses, are big places with lots of people, like multiple city blocks and tens of thousands of people big. The hospital you see is a mere fraction of what it actually is. Hundreds of doors, if not thousands, would have to be locked, unlocked daily and nightly. Parkades checked. Multiple buildings, institutes, old abandoned wards, underground maintenance tunnels that you drive in, helipads, mechanical rooms, dealing with violent patients, wrangling the homeless, moving bodies in and out of the morgue, organ delivery. It was honestly a wild job. I'm a music librarian. Everyone except musicians never know that exists. I'm completely different than your standard public or school librarian. I don't need a degree in library sciences or anything like that. Most, if not all, music librarians come from a music background like I do. I manage a whole library of orchestra or band parts and conductor scores. I also make sure the string players in the orchestra use their bow the same way. That is, up or down at the same time. Uniform bowings is a professional standard in all orchestras. You know, when you go to a really fun museum with lots of hands-on and interactive exhibits and cool exhibitions to wander around, I design those exhibits and exhibitions. Most people think it is a cool job and that I must get to do a lot of playing with tech and that it is a bit like Mythbusters. In reality, it is a cool job and I get to do a lot of playing with tech and it is a bit like Mythbusters. I'm a bull pimp. I work for an animal breeding service that specializes in cattle. Specifically, I work in semen collection from the bulls, and we offer a variety of options from fresh conventional to frozen sexed and everything in between, as well as embryos. I don't talk about it much outside of people in the ag industry. I'm a slot game mathematician, which means I create the math for slot machines. I work in land-based games. Most people just assume that slot machines materialize out of thin air and steal their money. So when I tell them my job, they always ask either how to win or if I add in a cheat so I can win. I was a screen printer for a few years. I know that people knew about screen printing, but we would allow people to go in the back to see the process. You would think we were doing a super duper top secret job with the way they would react to seeing it. Doing it. You don't see the big deal, but for people that never seen how it was done, it was really cool to see the colors added one by one to make a blank shirt into a completed shirt. Now, I'm a grain inspector, and every year we have college kids come in and I still get the same reaction when they see me doing my job. With both jobs, it was something that I did every day, all day. So, it lost the appeal to me. Looking back, I can see why people thought it was really cool to see how it was all done. I'm a screen printer too. It's magic to people who never see it and a pain in the butt after thousands of times of doing it, lol. I'm a cremation artist. I make custom jewelry and keepsakes using cremation ashes for my clients to honor the loved ones and pets they have lost. If I'm wearing a regular piece of jewelry I've made for myself, 100% of the time the person will ask who is in there and act super awkward like the thing is cursed. It cracks me up because I can recognize the look on their face before they even ask. I try to be as gentle and understanding as possible when talking about what I do. I know it helps people grieve and heal, and I don't want to misrepresent my work. Not me, but my sister's a forensic accountant. She's the one who digs through people's finances to find hard evidence to put them away for tax fraud, scams, money laundering, etc. A lot of people don't realize there are actual people whose entire jobs are dedicated to combing through absurd amounts of data for fraud. She also testified in trials a lot. I was a location scout for a while. It was just the natural result of my interests and location at the time. People don't realize that's a thing. Usually they're like, well, anyone could do that, or wow, that's fascinating. I tend to disagree with both reactions, and that's why I don't do it anymore, but I've never had a job people didn't realize existed except for that one. My current job is a job people don't understand, but they've at least heard of GIS analysis before. TBH, it does kind of blow my mind that more people know what GIS is than location scouting. I'm a GIS analyst as well, in the energy industry in Texas. GIS is much more common now than when I started, 2004, but those outside the industry still have no idea WTF it is. I tell them digital cartography analysis. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.